current job. I've renamed this one from Your Manager's Not a Mind Reader. And really, this is aimed at helping you find out what is it that you would like, what are you good at, and what's going to help you move forward and get more juice from the squeeze of your current role. So, if you've ever felt stumped when somebody has asked you, what do you want out of your role? What are your personal goals? Then this session is definitely for you. This is not a slight on managers at all. I initially, when I broached the subject on LinkedIn, the feedback was that managers should be having regular career conversations and should know what their direct reports really want out of their career. Yes, it's true that managers should be having regular career conversations. However, I know that I have been that report who's been able to give a really good, clear answer as to what would help me from my manager. And I've also been that report who's actually struggled to answer that question. So today we're going to look at a few tools that get us closer to what do we want and how do we get more juice from the squeeze of our current role. So what we're going to cover today is the death of the climb, a little bit about dread and promise, finding your starting point, and then also defining your genius, creating a map to move forward, and working out how to ask for what you want. So the poll that I put up in LinkedIn, and I've realized that it's not plain ball. There we go. So when I put this poll up on LinkedIn, it got an amazing amount of engagement in a really short amount of time. Just over half the people that responded said that, yep, they bring them up regularly. And there's an onus that they're kind of happy discussing their goals with their manager. But the remaining 48%, it really broke down between people that only mention it in a review cycle, people that just found it too risky, like they think their managers are going to judge them for perhaps not being happy in the role they're in now, or not necessarily wanting to go in the natural direction of the role they're in now. Then there's 10% that just don't know what they want. And really, this should help everybody across that spectrum, but definitely the 48% who are not having a regular conversation about their career. So let's look at where we are right now. It's really easy to assume that everybody just wants to progress to manager, VP, president, and climb the corporate ladder. That simply isn't true anymore. In 2020, Juliet Winkle-Giulioni, and I'll see if I can get her name right this time, she surveyed 750 working people. And her conclusion was that kind of climbing the corporate ladder was dead. She proclaimed the death of the climb. Instead, in order, what people wanted was a sense of contribution, that they could adequately contribute to their team, that they were competent in doing so, that they had the confidence to execute well. They wanted connection to their work and those around them. They wanted to feel challenged. Then it was contentment, then having a sense of choice, and lastly, it was climb. And that was true for all age groups, apart from Gen Z, who were new into their careers, and therefore they wanted to see some progression, but they still rated the climb 7 out of 8. So to run through that again, it's contribution, competence, confidence, connection, challenge, contentment, and choice. So what this suggests to me is that in most roles, there's more juice for the squeeze and what they're looking for. And my next question to you is, do you know what your ultimate destination is? So what is your North Star? And this is going to vary for many people, and it might be that this sends you into a tear. So think about, what is your North Star for now? The truth is that it will likely change shape over time. as you experience new things, new tasks, new environments. And it doesn't have to be definitive. It doesn't have to be, I want to absolutely get to the pinnacle of whatever organization. It might be more of a vibe, like I want to feel stretched in my day. Either way, you have to know that you are absolutely golden as you are, and it's more a question of direction. There's always a danger of a kind of I'll be happy when, and then it's I'll be happy when I get that promotion. I'll be happy when I'm earning 10 grand more. And you get to that and realize that you still have the same insecurities carrying everything else with you. So it really is a case of you're golden now. And actually, if you get that promotion, if you get that extra 10 grand, if you get to the top of the corporate ladder, you're still golden then. It's just a bonus. So, for context, I set up my coaching practice in September 24. And my North Star is to dance through my week, be fluid, and build a sustainable business which I love and that creates impact for my clients and their world and the people around them. So, on that note, there's an idea of dread and promise when we're put on the spot about our goals. Where do you sit right now? To me, all of that is thought and feeling, and we're connected to both of them all of the time. And feeling doesn't have to be a good feeling, but it's telling us something. There's always going to be information in it. And the other reason why this might fill us with dread or promise is because each of us sits in our own little reality. And that knowledge of that can also make it hard to then broach a conversation with our managers. So, how many times have you witnessed two people hear exactly the same information and draw very different conclusions? I think we see it all the time in our political arena, but it's also the same with anything. And I know in my world, if I ask two people a question about their 5-year goals, I can get two very different reactions. I can ask Dana and it will fill them up, fill their world with inspiration. They'll start chattering, they won't stop. It's difficult to get them to rein in. Or I can ask Ola, and for Ola, it just feels really onerous to think 5 years out. I haven't thought about next week or the next 5 minutes, let alone 5 years. And that is because everybody sits in their own reality and then casting zero judgment, because that's how it looks to them in the moment. And for Dana, it might be that they need to have everything planned to the nth degree. And for Ola, it might be that there's just so much going on right now that dealing with the immediacy is the key thing. And that brings us to where we make decisions from. Within all of us, we have that natural well of creativity to bring into being what we want to bring into being. And that kind of gets layered up in stresses, strains, what's going on with our week? What's my boss thinking? Am I going to hit target? Oh my goodness, is this client happy? I'm miles behind on this ticket and I don't know how I'm ever going to complete 15 story points, whatever it is. It all starts to cloud our judgment. It gets us further away from the core of who we are, where we can make decisions that feel really aligned with us. And in that, we might make decisions that are driven to escape, push away, or avoid something, or to create and pull towards an ambition. And ambition, when it comes from the onion, often means that when we get there, it still doesn't feel fulfilling. So in my work, because I work with the workplace, a lot of it is drilling down into that place of calm where we can tap into what feels aligned and make decisions from there. So when we make ambitious decisions that we want to push towards, it creates overall fulfillment rather than a drive with no fulfillment. So what is your starting point? Where are you right now? Thinking back to Winkle Giuliani's assertion that the climb is over, then what is it that you would like to do more of, like to do less of, like to grow into, develop from where you are right now? There is a personal development plan that goes alongside this workshop. So if you'd like a copy of that personal development plan, then drop me a line and I'll send it across to you. That first step, thinking about your current role, thinking about the things you do inside and outside of work. What would you like to do more of, and what would you like to do less of? In 2 columns, jot them down. Then think about your skills. So, what are the hard skills that you want to develop? If you're in sales, perhaps this is getting better at qualification, forecasting, maybe it's negotiation. It could be languages, it could be, if you're a coder, different languages, pipelines, it might be project management, graphic design. There's probably a list of hard, tangible skills that you want. Then think about the soft skills. So, increasingly, as I speak to people in technical roles, they're really looking at how do they communicate, building presentation skills, public speaking skills. So, what are the soft skills that you want to develop? Maybe it's active listening, whole body listening, critical thinking. And beyond that, what qualifications do you need, if any, to move you to where you want to go? Is it, I don't know, medic certification? Is it an AWS certification? Are there things that you need to be able to prove out to give you credibility for your next step? And thinking along those same lines, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? So I mentioned that I put together a personal development plan that sits alongside this session. When I first put it together, I had strengths and weaknesses at the top as a snapshot of where you are now. And I shared it with a few people in the Makers alumni chat. I used to work for Makers, and there's an amazing group of people who have been through the program or had otherwise been around the organization. And the feedback that I got was that it was really overwhelming to go for strengths and weaknesses first. I moved it further down, but I would say if you are feeling overwhelmed by that question, then know that it's not permanent. Really, it's looking at a snapshot of where you are right now. So think about the last 6 months. What did you excel in? And where are the bits that felt sticky that you'd want to improve in? And that will give you a good starting point for what you might want to work on over the next 3 to 6 months. Another way to think about this, and we'll look in the next section, is what's your genius? So, without further ado, let's explore the notion of the zone of genius. If you don't have a North Star, then orienting as much as possible to your zone of genius will help you to create a more fulfilling work life. The notion of the zone of genius comes from Gay Hendricks. So, really, if I was to map this out a little easier, then you would have incompetence, competence, excellence, and genius on an axis rising up. But I've represented it as a matrix, which might be slightly misleading. I'm going to talk through each of these boxes in turn. So your zone of incompetence, that is the area where most people can do those things better than you. In my case, that's anything to do with measuring. I once ordered some wooden blinds for my flat that were 2 inches too long. So I know that when it comes to precise work, I get my other half to do it because he's much better at that type of stuff than me, and I don't enjoy it. So it's somewhere where I'm not terribly skilled and my enjoyment from that task is really low. Looking at my zone of competence, these are the things that you can do just about as well as anybody else. So it's medium skill and it's lower enjoyment. Like, honestly, you could do it, but perhaps someone else should instead. For me, that is probably project management. I'm not bad at project management. I did a course in project management that I aced last year, but I have to be connected to the work for me to enjoy it. Otherwise, it really feels like a chore. The zone of excellence are the things that you can do better than most people, but it takes energy, so you excel at it. However, it's not the most enjoyable thing for you. And when I think about my career, I've always just slightly tweaked towards my genius, into my excellence, and try to rise out the competence and incompetence. So for me, that first switch was really thinking about account management. Like I loved problem solving and I was very good at dealing with problematic accounts, getting them to the place where they were just ready to grow now or manage. And actually, I was pretty good at managing those accounts. But once all the problems had been solved, it didn't excite me at all. So it was in my zone of excellence once their problems were solved because I had incredibly happy clients and partners and colleagues. But I found it draining when it was just a case of like maintaining and growing. And in my zone of genius, these are the things that you excel at. So, what are you exceptional at that gives you life, gives you energy? Time passes and it doesn't really feel like work. What are you highly skilled at that brings you a lot of enjoyment? For me, the most high impact thing I can do is coaching. And I really recognized that when I was working as a sales trainer and a coach. I could train an entire room, but it was in that coaching that it really seemed to be impactful and have concepts settle for people into a way of working. And that is why I coach. So now that you've thought about your strengths, your weaknesses, what you want to do more of, what you want to do less of, what you're competent at, and what you're absolutely genius at, let's set a map, set a destination, and work out a way to get there. And we'll do that through objective setting. So for each objective, consider what it is that you want to bring into the world, when you want to achieve it by, and the concrete actions you can take. That's the easy part, and I've not even mentioned SMART. So what is it you want to do? When do you want to do it by? What are some of the actions you can do? For those actions, let's stress test them. Let's dive a bit deeper and do a bit of a reality check. So, for your objective, how will you know you got there? You don't want to just run and run endlessly. So, what's the point that you're like, do you know what? I've done what I've set out to do. What resources do you have access to that can help you with the knowledge, the skills, the behavior? That might be things like e-learning, LinkedIn learning, courses, books, Gong, conferences, previous tickets, documentation. There's so much there that you will already have access to that will give you a bit of a leg up. And then be realistic. What's likely to get in the way? Are there peaks and troughs in your work? Do you have holiday booked? Does someone you need help from have holiday booked? And how can you mitigate those things that might get in the way of you achieving your milestones? And then support. Who are the people that can help you out? Is it your manager? Is it peers that are amazing at it? Is it other people in your industry? So for me, I've been absolutely blessed to have worked in affiliate marketing and worked in revenue enablement where people tend to work out loud. So conferences for me have been amazing to see what people are doing, share that information, and the Revenue Enablement Society on the enablement side, like the amount of sharing and knowledge sharing in that group, I am eternally grateful for. So you've got your objectives. We know roughly what you want. Now it's time to bump that up against someone else's reality and discuss that with your manager. And I'd go in with a bit of an open mind because actually they're going to be privy to some things that you're not. So when we think about the practicalities, what are your company's processes and procedures? Is there already a personal development document process out there? Have the competencies for your role and level been equally mapped out? Because if they're already mapped, then maybe you can RAG rate, so red, amber, green, rate against where you are now for your current competency level and the one up. And then if there's no competencies, what's in your job description that you can look at, particularly if you're looking for inspiration on the strengths and weaknesses? What about timing? If you're in sales, then the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year, whatever that reporting period is, it's probably not going to be the best time to bring a brand new conversation to your manager. They might have so much going on that they really don't hear you. It kind of depends on your manager. If they're the type of person who balances all of that all the time, then maybe that isn't that much of a concern. And then lastly, on the practicalities, what is your meeting cadence with your manager? Do you meet with them regularly for a one-on-one? In which case, what do those one-on-ones look like? Are they entirely operational and you'll spend, let's say, the whole half hour running through day to day? In which case, do you need to set aside separate time and just say, look, can we take an extra 20 minutes because I would love to just focus on my career progression and what I need to do to move forward? So do you need to carve out time to have a conversation around your own development? Next, let's look at the meat of having that conversation. Firstly, preparing yourself. Just check in with yourself. What feelings are coming through? Are they good? Are they bad? And what are they telling you? Our feelings are always telling us about that thought in the moment, but we don't really have to hang on to them. If they're all negative, we can choose which thoughts we follow, which we don't. So it's all about like what's going on for us, what's thinking we're creating. Secondly, prepare roughly what you want to say. Consider the solutions that you think you can take to them. You don't have to go in with a fully baked plan, because it might be that actually, if your boss knows you are kind of thinking about things in this way, then they might be able to think of opportunities that would be really suitable for you. They'll be able to partner with you much easier if they're aware of how you're thinking of things. You are totally wired for realizations. So do some of that work to think about the options that are open to you and try not to make that a zero-sum game. For example, if you always feel that your colleague is getting projects that are additional to them, allow them to stretch, maybe don't go in with Timmy always gets those projects, I want them as your solution. It could be job shadowing, special projects, mentoring new staff, leading a meeting, presenting at an external event. And then lastly, be prepared for no or not right now. This might not be your manager holding you back. It could just be that they are aware of priorities that mean that now isn't the right time. So if all else fails, you have this conversation, you're not really happy with the outcome, it doesn't feel like that not right now will ever come around, then what are your other options to stay where you are and get the experience you're looking for? There might be voluntary roles within your company, such as social committees or resource groups that require a chair, require a project that you can do alongside your work, or volunteering. I'm a trustee of a charity, and I know that there's always charities that are looking for all sorts of skills, whether people have them right now or whether they're willing to put the work in to develop them. So the voluntary sector is always going to be an option to help you carve skill and explore something new. So what we've covered today is finding your genius. What do you want to dial up, dial down, and develop in your role? Where do you fly right now, and where can you improve? We looked at creating a plan for skill development and for moving to that next step, and then making your ask. So Right now, I'd love to invite you to build your own plan. As I mentioned, I do have a personal development plan that runs alongside this presentation. So if you'd like a copy, then please get in touch and I'll send you that PDP template. And I'd also like to extend the offer of a complimentary coaching session to you. It can take a couple of forms, either a free-flowing session that is focused on an open conversation, getting you some clarity on what your next step is going to be. If you take the offer of the PDP template, then we can do professional development review, or we can look at a work-life strategy session. And that session, we look at a bit of a snapshot. What are you happy with? Where would you rate it? What are your priorities? And what do you really want to work on for the next 3 to 6 months? Where are the trade-offs? It's entirely up to you what form that takes, but the offer is there for you. And all that's left for me to say is thank you. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so on LinkedIn, on my email, hello@michelleanthony.co.uk, or go to my calendar, which is available at michelleanthony.com/meet me. Thanks for your time. Bye now.